Quantitative research, from its root word quantity, which means the amount of or number of. Quantitative research deals with numerals and how it can describe a phenomenon or infer a relationship. Quantitative research is the go to approach for scientific inquiry because of its ability to test hypotheses. The relationship of different factors that we see creates a clear picture of what is happening around us. These factors can also be called variables, which are the basis for formulating and testing hypotheses. Variables are traits that numerically describe or give meaning to an object, phenomenon, or group of people. These variables vary or change from one thing to another. Examples of variables are the height of a chair, the weight of a person, test scores of a student, or the speed of a car. Remember, variables are an important concept in research. They are the ones that are usually identified, examined, described, or correlated with answering a scientific inquiry. Characteristics of quantitative research. Quantitative research deals with numbers, and the following is a list of characteristics of quantitative research. Controllability. To understand a specific relationship or phenomenon, quantitative research should be in an environment where all variables are identified and can be controlled. Generalizability. It is from larger sample sizes that the results are based on as a representative of the population. Objectivity. The results of the data are observable and measurable using structured instruments. Replicability. The study should be replicable by other teams of researchers that will eventually come up with similar outcomes. Strengths of quantitative research. The factual quality of quantitative research and its generalizability to a population becomes the basis of its strength. Queiroz, Faria, and Almeida, 2017, who are researchers from Portugal, published a paper evaluating the strengths and limitations of qualitative and quantitative research approaches. In this subsection, we are going to list down and briefly describe each of the strengths of quantitative research. Analysis of data is assisted with statistical methods, are mathematical tools in which number can be processed to become more meaningful. Simple statistical measures such as determining the mean, median, and mode of a data set can also assist researchers in reducing the bulk of data to make it easier to understand. Analysis using statistics also provides unbiased results. Large-scale research can be undertaken due to many data collection methods that can be employed in quantitative research that are relatively easy to administer. A research with a large number of samples is possible. This also allows researchers to make a more comprehensive and generalizable conclusion for the entire population. Data can be presented in graphical or tabular form. Other than the statistical analysis, research can analyze data using graphical or tabular representations. Numerical data summarizes in a tabular or graphical form aid researchers in making sense of them better. Weaknesses of quantitative research. The following list describe the weaknesses of quantitative research. A large sample size requires a lot of time and effort. The goal to generalize the results of quantitative studies requires a larger sample size, which can be an issue for many researchers. This requirement increases the cost of research and its time frame becomes longer. Statistical analysis of data requires an expert to perform. Poor knowledge or inadequate skills in statistics might negatively affect the outcome of a study. Quantifying and reducing observations is just pieces of numerical values make it too simplistic. Numerical values can only answer the questions of what, and it is often difficult to use these values in answering the whys and the hows of the phenomena. Types of quantitative research. Quantitative research can generally be categorized into two, experimental and non-experimental type. These two types are used by researchers depending on the topic and the nature of the problem that is being investigated. Descriptive research. Descriptive quantitative research is an example of non experimental research design. The focus of this research design is to describe factors, variables, or phenomena that occur in nature. For example, you want to identify the factors that contribute to the spoilage of food. We know that there might be 1,000 reasons why food spoils, but the best way to narrow it down is to survey people that know about food spoilage. From there, one can analyze the data by using descriptive statistics by calculating the mean, median, or mode. From the result of survey conducted, for example, he observed that the frequency of temperature as a factor is the highest. It means that almost all of the research respondents say that temperature is a factor in food spoilage. Comparative research. This is another example of an experiment research design. The primary objective of comparative research, also called casual comparative research, is to compare two variables in order to identify whether there exists a causative, causative relationship between them. This kind of research usually involves two or more groups and one independent variables. For example, you want to know if participating in school's summer program is the cause of student increased class participation. You identified two groups of students who enrolled in the summer program and those who did not. Then you collect data about their class participation. After analyzing the data gathered, you conclude that the summer program helped the student in participating more in class. Tip: in order to identify which research design best suits your inquiry, determine your purpose first in doing the research. Correlational research. Another example of non-experimental research design. Its primary objective is to compare two variables and identify the relationship between them. For example, you want to know if the relationship between the length of sleep, student productivity. You can collect data for the length of sleep by asking students about their bedtime and waking up time. For student productivity, let's say the number of activities being finished every day defines student productivity. After gathering your data and subjecting to it to statistical analysis, we found out that the closer the length of sleep to 8 hours, the higher the number of activities being done by the student. Through this, you can now identify that there exists a direct relationship between the length of sleep and student productivity. Quasi-experimental research. Quasi-experimental research mirrors experimental research, but is not true experimental research where a causal relationship can be determined with the use of dependent and independent variables. Quasi-experiments differ because of random selection of samples. It is not possible due to innate or ethical reasons. For example, you want to know the effect of height of milk brand preference. True experiments would have a randomly assigned participants to group where they would be subjected to taste tests in order to know which brand they prefer. However, because height is an innate characteristic of a person, participants cannot be randomly assigned to groups. Instead, you have to group participants based on their height. Through experimental research. The primary objective of a true experimental research design is to identify a cause and effect relationship between variables where the examples are randomized. One of the earliest experiments that we have done is when we are trying to understand plant needs. For us to find out if sunlight affects the growth of plants, we are asked by our teacher to create three different setups. Set A is to grow a seed that will receive ample amount of sunlight. Set B is the seed that we will place where sunlight is limited, and set C is a seed that will place completely in the dark. All of them will be planted in the same type of soil and will be given equal amounts of water. After several days, we discovered that set A grew perfectly, set B grew, but leaned toward the source of light, while set C did not grow at all. Review. Independent variable is the variable that is manipulated. Dependent variable is the variable that is dependent on the independent variable, and this is the value being measured. In this experimental research design, a causal relationship can be determined between the dependent variable, which is the growth of plant, and the independent variables, which are the amount of soil, type of soil, and the amount of water. In more complex experiment research, a large sample size is required so that results can be generalized to an entire population. This is done by the process of sampling where respondents for a study are randomly selected from a population. Guide. Just by reading a research paper's abstract, you can get an understanding of the nature of the study's objectives. A conclusion that attempts to generalize a phenomenon or a relationship can immediately point us to quantitative research. Another clue that we can observe is the presence of different statistical values, such as the pi value or the Greek letter that indicates a relationship, or descriptive statistics means median or mode. If the variable is discrete, then it can be quantified. Guide. The presence of the word effect it is indicative that the research study aims to understand a cause and effect relationship that is attributed to comparative experimental or quasi-experimental research. The word relationship or correlation gives us clue that the research study is either a comparative or correlational study. Characteristics of quantitative research. Quantitative research is commonly used in natural sciences research problems because of the following characteristics. Number 1. Large sample size. To obtain more meaningful statistic research, the data must come from a large sample size. Objectivity. Data gathering and analysis of results are done accurately, objectively, and unaffected by research institution and personal guesses. Concise visual presentation. Data is numerical, which makes presentation through graphs, charts, and tables possible and with better convenience and interpretation. Number 4. Faster data analysis. The number of statistical tools gives way for less time consuming data analysis. Number 5. Generalized data. Data taken from a sample can be applied to population if sampling is done accordingly. Sufficient sized and random samples were taken. Number 6. Fast and easy data collection. Depending on the type of data needed, collection can be quick and easy. Quantitative research uses standards research instruments that allow the researcher to collect data from large sample size efficiently. For instance, a single survey from form can be administered stimulously to collect various measurable characteristics like age, gender, socioeconomic status. Number 7. Reliable data. Data is taken and analyzed objectively from a sample as a representative of the population, making it more credible and reliable for policy making and decision making. Number 8. High replicability. The quantitative method can be repeated to verify findings, enhancing its validity, free from false or immature conclusions. Advantages of quantitative research. The following are the advantages of quantitative research or its strength. Number 1. Very objective. Number 2. Numerical and quantifiable data can be used to predict outcomes. Number 3. Findings are generalizable to the population. Number 4. There is conclusive establishment of cause and effect. Number 5. Fast and easy data analysis using statistical software. Number 6. Fast and easy data gathering. Number 7. Quantitative research can be replicated or repeated. Number 8. Validity and reliability can be established. Disadvantages of quantitative research. The following are the disadvantages of quantitative research or its weakness. Number 1, it lacks the necessary data to explore a problem or concept in depth. Number 2, it does not provide comprehensive explanation of human experiences. Number 3, some information cannot be described by numerical data such as feelings and beliefs. Number 4, the research design is rigid and not very flexible. Number 5, the participants are limited to choose only from the given responses. Number 6, the respondents may tend to provide inaccurate responses. Number 7, a large sample size makes data collection more costly. Kinds of quantitative research. Quantitative research is a broad spectrum that it can be classified into smaller and more specific kinds: descriptive, correlational, ex post factor, quasi-experimental, and experimental. Descriptive design is used to describe a particular phenomenon by observing it as it occurs in nature. There is no experimental manipulation, and the researcher does not start with a hypothesis. The goal of descriptive research is only to describe the person or object of the study. An example of descriptive research design is determination of the different kinds of physical activities and how often high school students do it during the quarantine period. The correlational design identifies the relationship between the variables. Data is collected by observation since it does not consider the cause and effect. For example, the relationship between the amount of physical activity done and student academic achievement. Ex post facto design